Welcome to Vet Life Reimagined. Do people outside of vet med understand what's happening on the other side of the clinic door? Many people have an unrealistic view of veterinarians, even our own family members, idolizing the job because maybe they once wished they could be a veterinarian, or they think we play with puppies and kittens all day. It's a dream job with little struggles, right? Well, it can be a dream job, but even dream jobs come with a lot of challenges. And it was discovering a startling statistic about veterinary professionals that sent a couple of documentary filmmakers on an incredible journey into the world of veterinary medicine. As a warning, we talk about death by suicide in this episode. Frank and Marie Barnes are here with us today to share the behind the scenes of their documentary, Cost of Caring, a film to shed light on the unseen struggles of veterinary professionals. They will share the intricate process of creating the documentary, the unexpected impacts of filming during COVID, and their fascinating insights from a unique non-veterinary perspective. So let's open that door in the clinic and let's get to the conversation with Frank and Marie. This is going to be a really unique episode to talk about this documentary that you created called Cost of Caring. And it is about our profession. And I think it's exciting to kind of hear a different perspective of what you were seeing. But I would like to get to know you both just a little bit better, understanding your background. I think you told me you're both teachers, and then of course you're filmmakers too. So do you mind sharing a little bit about how you got into teaching and then found your way into being film directors?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to start?
No, you start that one.
Frank has a background in broadcast journalism, and I went to film school. He also went to film school, but before that, he was at one of the best broadcast journalism schools in the nation, Missouri, right? Yes, Mizzou. And so when we met later in life, we were both teaching, but I traced my path through working in film. But at the same time, so I was in Atlanta. I was working on, big budget feature productions. I was in the production office. It was everything I was supposed to do after film school. And I ended up having this yearning to go back to education. I wanted to do something more creative with my time, but I also loved teaching. When I was in graduate school, they gave me classes. And so I was like, oh, I really enjoyed that. So I got enough out of the industry basically to go back to teaching. And so when I met Frank, we were both teaching at the same place. And I told him my love for documentary, and he was like, oh, my background's in broadcast journalism. We're both teaching in mass media, but I've also made documentaries, and it was love at first sight. So it was like, we can be together and do what we want to do together. And that's where it kind of blends.
Yeah, if you do a Venn diagram, you see broadcast journalism is this circle and narrative film is this circle. The overlap is documentary.
Okay.
What we've got right there. We've been making stuff together ever since.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So what is something about making documentaries that maybe a lot of people don't get?
I think it's that, this is just my take. I think that it is, you have an idea, you research that idea because this is nonfiction. So you're not creating it. It's something that already exists in the world as we know it. And as you research it and get to know it, you learn something that leads you down an entirely different path. Sometimes that path can take you away from your original idea, but sometimes that path, that's where the magic is. And so your documentary ends up becoming about that, sometimes even instead of what you originally thought. What do you think?
Oh, my take is that it takes longer than you think it takes. Have an idea and hey, I'm going to do this, but then by the time you do the research, there's pre-production where you're thinking about it, then there's production, you go out and shoot the thing, and then post-production where you put the camera down and you start editing. That's all in good theory, but we were in the middle of, hey, we're writing this part, now producing this part, she'll start to edit, but there's like, whoa, wait, we got something else we have to go back and pick up because you're basically doing a jigsaw puzzle without a picture as a reference point. You have to basically build a picture as you're going. And it takes a little bit longer, you think. And it will also surprise you that you'll be having dinner, you'll put the fork down, oh, wait, I've got this. And that's it. You gotta go chase that idea right now. So it is a little bit consuming like that, but if you stay with it long enough and just have the patience to work the process, at the end, you can really get something pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how those overlap too. Both of you don't have the full story and you can get sidetracked. It's like, oh, one, you could like go down a path, and then two, when you're putting it all together, you might be like, oh, we missed something. We got to do this to connect these two pieces. So, and then again, when you were describing that, Frank, I thought about that journalism aspect of things too. You're kind of chasing the story and having to figure out what really is the story. Very cool. Now, you are also both a pet enthusiast, I think. And so did you grow up with animals? How did you kind of develop a love for
Okay.
pets?
I looked over because Boris, one of our current cats, he's right over here. So if he jumps in at some point, you've been warned.
Mike's house is theirs. They
Yeah.
just share it with us.
Yeah, we are the caretaker.
Yep. Sounds like a cat.
But no, I've always had pets. I've always had a dog. And when we got together, I had 2 dogs. She had 3 cats. And as they sort of aged out, we found other animals who are more than happy to, basically join the household.
Yeah, we've gone through, I hate losing them, and it's so tough. And so we had a house of 5 and now we're down to 2. And it just takes time before you can get over them, before you get more. Everybody I know has said, oh, we're really sorry you lost Beans or Shmoo or whatever. Let's go get a new cat. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way for me.
No.
But yeah, so I grew up around animals. I had a family that had, cats and dogs. Nothing exotic though. Like we have friends now that have goats and chickens and the sugar gliders. We have really exotic stuff. I think is pretty exotic. But we're a cat and dog, and
basics.
And they basically run our lives. We do everything around them. It's tough because when you make a documentary, you need to travel to get interviews and stuff. And we constantly have to battle do we board them? Do we find a pet sitter? It's hard to have somebody that loves your pets as much as you. Mm-hmm. So we've been lucky here and there to find some good people, but they also have lives and jobs. And so it's tough. I mean, it's just like having kids and trying to do something like be on the road to work or, do something creative or work in your day job. So, I mean, we've grown up and we've had pets our whole lives, but.
Yeah. And it's weird how you build a schedule around them now, because I might want to sleep in. The cats eat at 7:00 in the morning. At 7 a.m. without fail, they must have food.
Yeah.
And if I were to say, oh, wow, I slept till 7:15, I know about it. Boris walked across me
this morning.
It wasn't 7 either. It was like earlier than that. But his clock was off. And so he walked literally across my forehead.
Yeah.
And then he went and landed on you.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there are days when we're like, you have eaten more than we have, so calm down.
Yeah.
Like,
you'll be fine.
And they've gotten 2 meals in at that point, or a meal and a snack.
They get used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're your babies.
Timed feeders may be something you're interested in looking at. Just a little hint there.
I know. Go on little trips.
Mm-hmm.
But I am fully, now that it's come full circle and you've said that, I have fully been thinking about that.
I'm not kidding.
I'll slide my little nutrition tip in there, but well, I mean, it's, you're describing things that I think a lot of veterinary professionals deal with too, not, our own animals for one, our lives, not to mention that we go to work with them too. So I'm really interested to hear how you started to know that there was something kind of unique about the veterinary profession. And of course, end up making a documentary about it. But as, you discussed, it is once you figured this out, you realize that not a lot of people outside the profession understood this. So do you mind sharing the journey to finding that out and kind of your thoughts through it to get to the point of maybe interest in making a documentary about it?
Yeah, sure. So having pets, you take them to the vet, and I've got my first 2 cats that were my heart cats, the ones that, I mean, I will love every pet that we have and get in the future, but there are some that just are your very first that really take your soul and you just become bonded. So I got them in grad school, and as they got older, they got to their geriatric years, and I'd taken them to the vet. Obviously, over their lifetime, they got both of them ended up with renal disease. And I was so upset with myself. I thought, man, I did something wrong, but it wasn't. It's just cats. These were the first 2 cats I've ever seen that my family had, or these were my first 2 of my own ever. none of them ever had rectal disease. I was devastated. And so I started going to the vet all the time. And, I think I did drive Dr. Alexander, who's in the film. I drove him a little crazy, but he's so good to me. I started spending so much time at the vet just trying to figure out the food to put them on, what they would eat. We went through so many different versions, as you know, like we tried all these different diets. So that was a process. Then it was blood work a lot of the time. And then it was subcutaneous fluids. It was like stuff. And so I realized fully that I was becoming a client that was probably giving him a hard time. Like, no, looked weird today.
Mm-hmm.
What's that mean? But I also fully recognized how much he was investing in trying to help me on this journey. So I got really close to him in my clinic, and it's not like they came up to me one day and said, did you know there's this problem in veterinary medicine with, suicide rates?
Mm.
It was just, it happened organically. Our practice manager, who's our associate producer on the film, we started spending a lot of time together. I sat down with her one day and we were just talking, and I said, we need to do something about this. If I don't know, other people don't know. I have a vehicle. Like, I have a way that we can get the word out. And it literally just started this tiny little seed at my clinic. And then it just blew up into one person saying, talk to this person, talk to this person, talk to that person. It led to the University of Tennessee with Dr. Strand. And then that led to us down the road, a few people getting in touch with America's veterinarian, Marty Becker. And then that led us to like Dr. Andy Rourke. And it just became this huge thing. And we were able to, luckily enough, raise some money to fund it because it was a lot of travel. And that's how it got started and how we were able to do it.
Yeah. And what we found is that veterinarians I want to say it's the biggest small town ever because everyone knows each other. And so we'd say, oh, we're talking to Marty Becker. Oh, yeah, I saw him at a conference. And also, Andy Rourke was working with this person. And everyone knows each other. I think Marty actually said at one point, you put all the veterinarians in the country into a football stadium together because there's not that many. And there's literally not 7 degrees of separation, but like 3 degrees or 2 degrees separation between every vet and by extension, every vet tech. Everybody knows each other.
Yeah.
And so it was really helpful by the time we started making this. And then it get a little bit bigger. Then suddenly you're having phone calls, people saying, hey, do you want to fly out to California? Can you come up to Idaho? Can you get down to Florida? Can you get to, and so that's where the project, it began a snowball, but in a very good way. And so we talk about you're building the story as you go. That's exactly what happened. It started with a small story. And then there was so much more material, and we wanted to put in every single minute that we could.
Yeah, like we started with a topic, like a thesis, but we didn't realize after peeling back the onion, like we knew there was this issue, but we didn't know all the things that could lead to it. Mm-hmm. And so that was the journey for us as the storytellers. Yeah. And we were lucky to have people want to talk to us about it.
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head there. I call it the biggest little profession, but I like the way you said it because we are a very close profession. I think I like to think that we're fairly supportive of each other as well. And so when we see something good, we like to share it. And so I'm glad that was your experience. It's like, oh, you need to talk to this person too, to get their perspective. And also kind of neat that you were able to travel all over this country to interview. So this isn't like, oh, this only happens in California or no, you got the kind of a coverage that I think is a true perspective of what at least the veterinary profession in the United States is looking at.
Yeah.
And so kind of pulling back what you were saying earlier that you kind of start with an idea, and then as you kind of dig in, you can kind of go down different paths. And that sounds like what you were discovering. And I liked how you said you called it, you kind of start with a thesis. You're starting to put it in sciencey terms. So for us that are like, oh, we get that, we're scientists. So what was that adventure? What can you start with? And then what did you start to discover along the way that, like you said, was starting to shape this overall narrative that you were creating?
Well, yeah. So one of the problems was that we couldn't put everything in.
Yeah.
We learned like all these things. And then, well, I'll talk about that later, but the thesis was, why is there a higher rate than in the general population? Okay. And so there was a story that came out about a young man whose parents we talked to in the film, Dr. James Weaver. And as I was talking to Casey, our practice manager and associate producer, about starting this little seed that was growing, we should do something. On her Facebook, for some reason, his story went viral. Like, I think there had been a few people who had died by suicide before him, and it was a chain in a short amount of time. And his story, for some reason, came across people's Facebook from groups they were in that normally they wouldn't have shown up. So she literally said she sent it to me, and I saw him, and I was like, we have to do this like right now. So it started out with like that thesis, then sort of seeing like, can we talk to his parents and find out more about what happened? That led to talking to more veterinarians, and we talked to like Dr. Alexander here, and he led us to Dr. Strand. And then I researched the news, and the topic was quite sensationalized. It was like, veterinarians are dying at an astounding rate. Like, I mean, it was like crazy. And so I was like, but there has to be other reasons. And also we had to learn how to report on this, because there's a way to report on suicide and verbiage and things that I've never done this before. And so, well, once people trusted that we were being delicate with this and we had true intentions, they ended up opening up more and explaining, okay, look, there's burnout, there's compassion fatigue, there's the leaving school with high amounts of student debt. We even went into the match system. We went into how much it costs to start a clinic. And that's why I'll come back to what I started with. Some of these things didn't make it into the film because we have a finite amount of time to get it aired. But we tried to go down as many avenues as we could, and we learned all these things, and we test screened it with some audiences, and we got that feedback. And what they could glean from it was, being a client, they don't see your student debt. They don't see the match system. They don't see the stress from that. But they do know that if they've been in the office and they've given you a hard time because you were running late, that now in this test screening, they're like, I had no idea. I didn't know what it was like behind the scenes. I didn't know they were going from a euthanasia to a puppy. Then so we really latched onto those things. And that's what kind of created the film that you see today. Yeah. I hope that explains it all very well.
Yeah, and kudos to Marie, because the delineation of powers, there's a lot of overlap in what we do, but I tend to be more on the shooting end and she does more of the editing. And one of the biggest challenges we had was, who do you not put into the final product? And what story threads do you not put in? Because again, it's 56 minutes and
36 seconds specifically.
It has to be that exact amount.
For PBS.
And so, there's a lot of things that, we talk to people. It's like, what about this person who's trying to get into vet school and doesn't get into vet school, but tries repeatedly?
We went down that path. Like we really, Yeah.
And there's so many stories, and we found that there's no lack of stories to be told.
Right.
And I think the one regret we both have was that and we always say this should be a 6-part series on Netflix or something like that, just get everyone out there. But even if we did that, there's still a story that you're not going to hear. And it's equally important. So we had to get something representative of what is going on across the entire industry.
We just so you were shooting, I'm editing. We had other people helping us. We were trying to tell a story. We went back and forth about what is the audience, because we were trying to maybe walk a line between, is this for pre-vet and vet students, something they should know before they go in? Is this for veterinarians so that they feel good that someone's having a voice for them and opening up? Not that you guys don't have a voice, it's just that maybe not a lot of films have handled this delicately, or and so is it for your industry, or is it just for my mom or your mom, or people that don't know or understand what's actually happening that causes the stress? And so once we settled on that, I think that's the film that we ended up with, and I think that's why it was successful and got on PBS. It's on PBS National now. We never anticipated that. We thought maybe it'll be on PBS Nashville, and we'll try and, self-distribute it, put it on Amazon Prime and Vimeo and stuff. But they pushed it nationally. So it's on the same page right now as all the current events that are happening in the country.
Yeah.
So like you open us up and no matter what you think about our current administration, we're on there with like POTUS, like right beside. I'm like, oh gosh.
There's us.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh. It's just interesting because they've put us at the caliber of current events.
Right.
As things that are happening right now politically in our country. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. So I think we did the right thing by picking the avenues that we did to tell the story that we hope will make the most difference.
That was something that we had talked in our pre-call too, was who is this movie supposed to be for? And it was supposed to be the average pet parent who, I've started to use this phrase because I like it, who's on the other side of the door, right? Of the veterinary clinic. And I think that is an important perspective because also the time you were filming this, and one, I've already done this to you once. I'll give you a second kudos for being able to do this during the pandemic, because in the video you can see masks. You know, this was during the pandemic, which hopefully I can speak from the veterinary side. I think the challenge of communicating with pet parents increased significantly during the pandemic. I think in general, it's a scary time and people reacted to a scary time in not the most flattering ways. And I think it came out a lot on the veterinary professionals. And for us who do care so much, we take it personally and we take it really hard. And so can you share a little bit also, telling the story in a really heightened time of fear and probably challenge just in logistically, but probably also heightened emotions? Like, what were you kind of sensing around that?
Well, okay. I think things happen for a reason. Nobody knew COVID was going to happen. No. We had the idea. It was sort of like right before. And I mean, this has been 3.5-year journey. So if you look at the timeline, we had this idea, but by the time you raise money and like get into it and try and like get it going, because we wanted to crowdfund to do all this stuff, we're like in COVID. So I'm like thinking, oh gosh, should we stop? Should we wait? Like I felt so strongly about the message. I kind of couldn't stop, but I think that happened for a reason, because I think it was at a time where all of this was happening in your industry and people needed to vent. Like they were like, I want to talk about this. And I think, even I learned that with COVID, I had this perception that, oh, everyone's just running out and getting pets. That's a good thing because adoption rates are up. It was Marty Becker that actually explained to us that it wasn't so much that people, and Jim Clark, people weren't just running out to get pets. It was that people were home with their current pets more, and that they were like, okay, that's weird. That doesn't look right. Yep. I didn't see that before because I wasn't here. So you have this huge increase in people just, I don't want to say they weren't caring, but caring more, and then going to the vet, and then that flooded you guys, and you're having to go out to the cars and not see them in the clinic, and it just, the protocol changed. It was this confluence of events, and then I'm over here going, hey, I want to make this film, and people were like, well, let me tell you. And I'm like, well, okay, I think that's a good thing, And so I don't know what else you want to say, but that was my take on it.
No, and COVID was a challenge just from the production side, because now, can you fly? Can you drive? If you see Dr. Elizabeth Strand, we interviewed her outside. The reason she's outside is because I think COVID was just kicking in at that point.
UT's protocol.
Yeah, UT's protocol. Yeah. So if we had talked to her, so it's a very wide shot, and thankfully our audio guy was just on it. So
shout out to Bobby.
Yeah. But it was just one of those things that you had so many things going on, but you had to work around it. And what we found is that the vets still wanted to talk. They wanted to be heard, and they wanted to say, hey, this is, now it's a problem that's compounded by another problem. And when you have people at home, like Marie said, when you have people who might see their dogs and cats early in the morning and then late at night, hey, now I'm with you for an extra 8 to 10 hours a day. Now I'm noticing that you're going to be acting in a different manner than what I expected. Yeah. Maybe I do need to see the vet. Yeah. And so everyone just walked in their own way.
We literally, everything is for him. And we just live here. I mean, this is just then this app is.
Yes, for those on audio, we had a cat join us. So.
My cat just walked across me and now it's in my.
That's a very good point too, is that time did probably increase people's willingness to chat, because it was so heightened and they probably did need to vent. So what an interesting perspective. Now, did you learn more by the end of this? Like, did you walk away more? All the interviews, seeing all of this, putting this story together, hearing maybe feedback from the first audience. Where are you now with the situation?
Oh my gosh. I learned, like I said, we peeled back the onion. I will admit, I started out with a narrow view of course, veterinarians have a higher suicide rate because, they went into this for loving animals and they have to put them down. And I was very focused on that. I didn't know like communication was such an important aspect, that it's a finite sometimes amount of money for people. It's a cash system. It's not like a lot of people. I mean, maybe more people do than I think have pet insurance, but like personally, we don't know anybody that does. I feel like pet insurance is something that, and I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but is foreign to a lot of people still. And now I'm like, oh, that communication that happens in that brief half an hour that you have with a client that maybe hasn't brought their pet in ever, or brings them in, but loves their pet, but they're on a budget, like, or, loves their pet so much they would do anything, but maybe it's not necessary. It could be more harmful even. Like that, I learned that communication and that exchange is super important. We have that part in the film where Dr. Journey's trying to explain how much some of this stuff costs. And she's saying that we can do just the meds, like treating with the meds instead of maybe doing more diagnostic digging. And it's like a lot of money. And the couple that have the dog, and Dr. Journey says, there are options. Sometimes I watch that scene and I'm like, oh, she has to explain the money. And then I'm like, am I making a scene that makes people upset with the veterinarian because she's telling you how much it costs and it seems like a lot? Or am I really pointing out that there are options and she's saying there are options, but if you want to know more, you have to do this? And I really struggled with that, but I'm like, we have to edit things elliptically so that the viewer doesn't get bored, basically. And so we had to sort of pick and choose those sentences, but do it ethically so that the original point is still intact and the original conversation is still intact and the original feelings between the two parties are intact. But I feel like that scene in particular, what I've learned the most is that communication is something that it must be really hard for a veterinarian to have to do that constantly, because I think a lot of people get pets because they love animals or they bond with it's the cat distribution system. You all of a sudden, a cat comes up to you, you're like, oh, this is my cat now. But then when you have something goes wrong and you have to take it to the vet, you might not be prepared. I mean, people are really doing the best they can and emotions run high. And it's that communication. I think I would like to make an entire film on just that.
Yeah, I actually remember the scene very vividly. It was one that just really stood out to me too. I believe she was a neurologist, but she was a specialist, and I think she was recommending imaging, and the imaging was going to be quite a few thousands of dollars. And the couple with the pet, they were a younger couple, very understandably, that's shocking, in the single digits of pets that are covered by insurance. And that even then, insurance in the pet side doesn't work the same way as in human healthcare.
Right.
So it's still different. Like it's still not you just walk in and you feel like you pay a copay and you walk home, right? It doesn't work like that. So yeah, there's still a lot of challenges. Yeah. And I'm actually really excited to have this conversation. It's kind of coming to me as we're talking, because even though we are seeing potentially pet ownership is slowing down, maybe even going down. And visits to the veterinarian are actually going down a little bit in general. Cost of care is increasing. And so a lot of these things are kind of coming back, slightly different angle, but very similar. And so I think it's good to keep checking in with us. How can we do this better? And so, yes, I'm glad that we're able to have this conversation. I know it's been a few years, but it's important for pet owners to understand both sides, especially, again, I think at the end of the day, when we talk about assume good intent, right? Oh my goodness. When it comes to veterinary medicine, these people are here because they are passionate about your pets. And you said trying to find somebody who cares about your pet as much as you do. There's nobody who cares as much as you do. But as close as possible is your veterinary team. I will tell you that.
Well, and Dr. Jim Clark, he wants to, and there was a lot we didn't get to put in the film, but that I also couldn't keep going down that rabbit hole. But he's very passionate about the financial side. Planning, like a project I would love to do is just talking about that. So communication and then the financial side, because his point is that oftentimes students come out of school very charged, ready to go. They've learned all the things, the science part of it, all the exciting things, and they're going to do all this stuff. And then he pointed out to us that they struggle with kind of even knowing what the things cost. Because, he's like, we're starting to talk about that more, but he's like, and even Marty was like, when I was in school, it was very much like, you know how to fix the things, now go fix the things. And I feel like the communication side and then the financial side, what he's also interested in, Dr. Clark, is how much does it cost to start a practice? What are you really looking at? Things like that. Just the business side of it. The more informed you are, the better you can work with your clients on that. So yeah, anyway, that's just a sidebar of what he and I talked about a lot.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think vets are more aware of cost than human physicians, again, because they definitely aren't taught it either. And they're just like, oh, well, insurance and those people will figure it out. It's definitely a unique aspect of being a doctor in veterinary medicine versus human healthcare, I think, again. The other thing that I'm really interested in hearing is, I'm in the veterinary world. I hear this side of the door a lot.
Yeah.
I'm curious, once you started showing this film to the intended audience, so pet parents, everything from that first viewing audience to ever since, what feedback do you hear?
Yeah. I'm talking a lot.
No. That's okay. Because you know the answer to this one better than I do.
We get two reactions. We get more than the other reaction. We get, oh my God, I had no idea. I mean, Casey, literally at her clinic, a guy, she was just telling him about the project. He came in and apologized. He was like, I had no idea. So we get that. I had no idea still. We first got, you're talking about veterans, right? And we're like, no. Good.
Yeah.
And then when people see the film, it's like, wow, it's this not I wouldn't say life-changing, but enlightening. I had no idea what was going on behind that door. Then we get the other, it's not, I would say 80% of the time, we get the I had no idea reaction. And 20% of the time, it turns into, well, let me tell you a story about a time that I had a horrible experience with my vet.
Yeah.
And they're very adamant about their experience. And, people have their experiences and that's okay. And I find myself listening and saying, I know that must have been hard. And then I find myself taking up for the profession as someone that's not even in it by saying things like, well, veterinary science, because it's something I learned. It's sometimes not perfect because they can't talk and you can't ask them questions and you're sort of trying to figure something out in the dark. They see that your baby from birth to earth, as Marty Becker would say.
Yeah.
And veterinary specialty medicine is a whole other thing. So you go to your vet, you're having a problem. You must solve all these things now and know all this stuff. I try and explain that, and that softens it somewhat. But those are the two reactions we kind of get. And thankfully, I feel like we're making a difference, because at least the 80% is like, I had no idea. And I'm like, that's why, yes, that is why I did this. Thank you.
Well, we had one screening where a high school teacher came out, and nothing against high school teachers. They do an amazing job. They work hard. But she basically said, well, why are the vet special? Because I'm a high school teacher. I have stress. My days are hard. It's true. We're not negating the fact that anyone's job is hard. Everyone has a hard job. Yeah. But I can't wrap myself around how your brain works, a veterinarian. Because you have to learn everything about every part of the animal that you're dealing with. Unlike, saying, the human side, hey, if I have a heart attack or something like that, there's a cardiologist. If there's a specialty for podiatry, so if I have a foot trauma, I go to that person. You have to know everything about everything to keep this patient alive and happy and healthy. Yeah. And, the outcome if that doesn't work out, well, there's the euthanasia option. Right. Which does rear its head in some. I think Dr. Strand talked about this very well, that some people don't have the reverence for the animal's life. Right. And so it's like, well, it's going to be this much money. Well, that's the obvious out. And so I think the reaction that we're having, that a lot of people, when they see this, they think, we didn't know there were so many different demands upon the vet student, the vet tech, the veterinarian themselves. And there's all these things happening all the time. So you really can't equate it to the stress and drama that a high school teacher goes through.
You can't.
Because there's just, the stakes are so much higher, and you have to deal with them day in and day out.
Well, and if there's all these other professions that are caring professions, and there's like all of these other topics, like in all of these other areas, and they do come back to sort of the same thing with compassion fatigue. But I just feel like in our culture, we know and have been taught, or we've acquired a knowledge of, firefighters, police officers, nurses, like people who are in other caring professions. And we're like, oh, we know they must deal with an incredible amount of stress. The perception is what the problem is. The perception of veterinarians is that you just play with puppies and kittens all day. Yeah. And so for me, that's why it's important, out of all the caring professions, to sort of like explain more, because people really have this like view of you guys as like Dr. Doolittle, as Marty Becker would say, coming in and just solving the problem, and like puppies and kitties, and I'm good, you're good, it's all good. And it's like, but it's not all good. Yeah. And it's, here's all these factors, and then here's where the stress comes from, and going into those like topics. And then like you said, like, this is the only profession out of all the rest of them that deal every day with ending life, and multiple times a day sometimes. And, I know there are some states that, do like in the human profession, end of life stuff. Yeah. There are other, like I did watch something the other day on, there are some states that can help you in like for really terminal people. Yeah. Help you end your life early, but it's not like assisted suicide. But that is not like any equation to like dealing with euthanasia on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's the exception to the norm.
Right, exactly.
For you guys, the norm is, there's that option.
Yes. So, that's why I think it's important to really talk about this in this profession specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I want to thank you so much for all of the work that you have gone into looking at our profession and wanting to share the story with the pet parent audience. It helps because it sits differently when it comes from somebody outside of the profession. Instead of us having to try to defend ourselves, someone else is able to share that story from a unique perspective that can also relate. And so I think that's important. That said, if you think about all that you've seen and learned, is there something that you think that veterinarians, veterinary technicians, the whole team, is there a good approach to sharing our perspective with pet owners that might help further let people understand a little bit more about who we are and what we do?
Well, first, I'd also want to just say, we centered this film around veterinarians. We tried to get in some vet techs and vet office staff. I want to say on the record, I want to make a whole other movie about them. Like, saying like it affects the whole team. It is not just the veterinarian, it's the entire hospital, office manager, the assistant, the tech, the veterinary nurses, like everybody. So that would be something I would love to do as well, because that is also a different perspective.
Yeah.
I know that Casey had put in their office during COVID, she had taped up on like the front door. And then when people were allowed to come in on the front door, like, here's all the stuff we're dealing with. Please ask us about it. We were that I think is useful. It starts a conversation that people might not have otherwise about, oh, what is this about? And then that dialogue can happen. We went and screened the film the other day at another college campus. And our friend was like, you need to start a campaign and it needs to be called Adopt a Vet. Well, actually, I looked it up and they do have that, but it is for veterans. I don't know that quite the answer, but I will think on it for a long time. And the second I come up with something, I'm going to let you know. But what I would love is that if the film, we didn't have to self-distribute it. We could just, I feel like if we put it on YouTube, it would go worldwide. Like it would, our trailer that we made to raise money got 46,000 hits, like in a very short amount of time. But I don't know. It's like, we need to be made whole for our efforts. So we're trying to make back any little bit that we can. But I don't know. Do you have an answer?
Well, I think I hate to fall back on the, just being nice to the vets, because.
Yeah, it means ingrained in our culture somehow, like with firemen and policemen.
Right,
and
because
nurses.
you aren't that level of care. Because I think the difficulty with the vets, I mean, there's a couple of things working against you, obviously, because no one knows what your background is. When they come to see you, if it's not a wellness visit, they literally come to you on the worst day of their year, and you have to fix it. If you don't, you're a bad person, and people can always fire back on social media against you and say, well, the doctor was, a jerk and charged too less and all that.
Didn't fix it.
Yeah, that didn't fix my dog. Yeah. The other problem I have, and this was something that if you watch any movie, the Hollywood depiction of a veterinarian.
That's true.
And I remember because, yes, I watched Grey's Anatomy, but I remember at one time, there's a hulky vet in a flannel shirt. It's like, I'm a veterinarian. And he was, and I'm thinking of The Walking Dead. It's like, hey, look, I consult. I'm a vet and all. It's just,
no, because he had no stress. The stress was with the residents.
Yeah.
And she's dating him, and he's like, my life is beautiful.
It's okay. Here's a dog.
Like, I mean, that whole narrative. I mean, you're right. I can't think of other examples. That's a good point, though.
But I just know that every time, Hallmark movie of the week for Lifetime Channel, or I'm a veterinarian in a small town in Colorado. Come on, it sounds like I watch these all the time. I promise I don't. But I had to research for this. It's like, how are vets portrayed? And how do people perceive what the veterinarian is going to look like? And then you walk in, it's like, wow, you're having a stressful day. We had no idea. And that was sort of, for a lot of people, that's the launching pad.
Yeah.
Where you think, this is what it's actually like in real life.
Though, we did, when we were trying to get people to come to some screenings initially, we put together a little press kit, and they had stickers and stuff in there. And maybe we should take one of our stickers, and through Canva is where we made it. And I know a lot of people were like, oh, I hate Canva. Well, it was
I love it.
It was good for me. I'm not, a graphic designer. So it served its purpose for me.
Yes. So
anyway, I feel like after one of our screenings, there was somebody who went. It was probably Michael Shirley. I love him. Somebody took all of the swag that we were handing out to the people that came to the screening. Anyway, I feel like if we just made that stuff available and it was like, hug your vet today, like it was like stuff like that.
Yeah.
If we just put those things out, you know what? I will just say it right now. I would do that for free on our website. Yeah. We have some tools on there, like, post a good social media post.
Yeah.
Hug your vet if they will accept hugs.
Hug,
yeah, hug them. We're not advocating going around just randomly hugging people. And then take them food, donate to their Good Samaritan Fund, like things like that if you can. But maybe we'll put some of the materials, like the sticker, like you could just print them out on paper, but you could just clip them and you could have them out for people to take. And then they'll be like, what is this? And maybe that would start a conversation.
Yeah.
I like it. That's a good idea. And we definitely, I mean, you could do that anytime. I never want people to pause and wait for a particular occasion that's months away to start a good idea. But yeah, there is a like veterinary appreciation day and things like that.
What do you think? I mean, because you're in the profession, like, what do you think will open up more conversation? Like somebody would never have seen this film. They don't see this film. How would they know? Like, what are some of the other things you think that might help?
Well, I mean, there was a reason I asked you. I was like, we're trying to, yeah. But, one of the things that we're trying to focus more on always, and this is a human thing, right? It is really how can we improve our communication? And I think some of it is on our side is stopping and listening too. And sometimes it is hard to do that because if it's a general practice exam, you feel like you have 15 minutes and it's not exactly a time to say, oh, and did you know that being a vet's kind of hard,
Yeah.
Yeah. But doing our best to make sure that we're listening to them too, because people don't want to listen to you if they don't feel listened to.
Right.
Sure.
So, there's some opportunity there.
Yeah.
It's little, but sometimes there's a certain point where we can only control what we can control. I think if we can be the patient listener that we wish other people were too, that's a start. And then we can partner with individuals like yourselves. What are people saying when they hear these things, and how can we partner to continue to keep that conversation going so that people do see, it's a kind of a catch-22. This is the other thing too. And I think this is definitely a medical thing too, not just the medical profession, but if you think about that on both sides, is that we go to school and we want to be seen as very competent.
Right.
We want to be seen as intelligent and that we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're afraid to show the human aspect of things in fear that might lower our look of competence.
Yeah.
And interesting enough, if you look at psychology studies, is that when we do show our humanity in certain ways, right? When we do pull in those human elements, people actually trust us more.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a phrase that we definitely get taught in vet school, at least I sure did, is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Oh.
And so I think it comes back to that. Yes, we still need to be competent. We still need to know what we're doing.
All the things.
But we also need to make sure that we are conveying that we really do care. And it won't be a hit every time and not always our fault because, like you said, a lot of times we might see that person at their worst day because something is unexpected to a living thing that they really, really love.
Yeah.
And so there's always going to be that challenge.
Yeah.
But I think if we can keep returning to assume good content, trying to do our best to make sure that we're showing how much we care, I think we'll start to see that things get a little bit easier as we go.
Oh, I love that.
Hope so.
And then what is your perception of our film in the place of your industry? Like, because again, we tried to walk that line of who we were making it for. And so, we always love to hear feedback from vets too about what they think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I really appreciated it. I've seen a couple of documentaries about pet before and not always loved them because sometimes it can take this extreme angle, kind of what you were saying about the headline. And so I can see some people take things to the extreme and sometimes that may give a bad reputation on documentaries. I think you did very well. I did say this before, the thing at watching it, you can feel a little depressed on the veterinary side because and it's like you feel it in such an empathetic way that a lot of it feels kind of dark and depressing. And then there's like at the brief end, you're trying to bring up the beat a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's that. Yeah. And that's why I love being able to talk about it, like the behind the scenes and what was going on, so people can say that movie was for the pet owner so that they understand what you are going through. So realize that that's the intent of it. I think that's so important. And one thing that, again, we're also working on is how do we acknowledge the challenges in veterinary medicine without placing this assumption that this is just the way it's going to be.
Sure.
How do we start implementing things to make things better, support each other more, have these open conversations where we're comfortable on saying what we need in a moment.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing between colleague and colleague especially is that, man, I've had 3 euthanasias this week already. There's another one here. Dr. Smith, can you take this one for me? And we need to be able to have those open conversations.
Yeah.
So that's, when I would love for the veterinary community to watch this documentary, but also know that this is telling a part of our story to the pet parent so that they can empathize in a way that they do not see.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to us, when we're going to answer these challenges that are being shown, is that we need to come up with this. Don't assume that this is just the way it's always going to be. This means that this is a challenge that we need to keep talking about to make sure that we are improving and supporting each other appropriately.
Yeah. No, when we were first having this conversation and you said that, I was like, that's the first time that someone's articulated it well for us to really understand. Because we kept thinking oh, we did this great thing for you guys. Please kind of love it, Well, what it ended up coming out as was, I wish you would have gone into this more, or I wish you would have gone into this more. When you said it like that, I was like, no, that encapsulates it. And it really shows us that things end often how they begin. We came into this trying to lift the veil and show what happened so that people understand more because of that perception issue. And then we went down these rabbit holes because honestly, and Dr. Kwan says this, but it's not in the film, but in his interview, he's like, people can get kind of obsessed with the veterinary profession and why we even went into this in the first place. I'm one of those people. I'm because I love pets too, and I love animals, and I'm it kind of makes people kind of revere you and go, and of course they're going to think well, since you did that, nothing could possibly be wrong. And so sorry, where was I going with that? Anyway, yeah. So we wanted to go down this rabbit hole and I was learning all this stuff. And I was I want to make something that explains everything in your profession so well, because I am a little obsessed with it, but I had to keep coming back to where it's important. And our team that helped sponsor us, mentor us, Dr. Bob Murtaugh, Dr. Jim Clark, Dr. Marty Becker, we had many conversations about where this was going. And they saw this was an hour and a half. At one point, it was an hour and 45 minutes. Then it was an hour and a half. And then we kept test screening it, having them look at it. And we had deep conversations about who the audience was.
Yeah.
And like I said, things end often how they begin. It would have shortened the amount of time to get the film out if we would have stayed focused. But I'm really thankful for the journey it sent us on. Mm-hmm. And I would be even more thankful if someone had the studio power or the funding power for us to do a 5-part series on your profession, because I do think there is an audience for it. We see on Animal Planet or on social media, there are clinics that do a lot to show you behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's kind of any of those reality shows where you're seeing something about a profession or a way of life. And that's what reality TV is. I wouldn't make it like reality TV. I would just kind of take what we did, but go into more of the stuff we didn't get to talk about, or more of the things that aren't just focused on coming back to the thesis of the high suicide rate, that are let's dig deeper into the aspects of burnout, or let's dig deeper into the aspects of social media, or into how COVID affected. Let's go into those. I feel like I could represent that well. We just have to find somebody that also cares enough about your profession, that's from a big studio that can afford it to put it into production, because we're 2 people that teach college students. At the end of the day, that's where we are. And so thankfully we have a day job.
Yeah.
So anyway, I would love to do that. I think it would be great.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can get this out and we can hint that there's content there. They just need a little support. And we have a great profession. We have a great we have great companies that really like to support this profession. So, I think I said this too, is it is not far-fetched that there might be a company out there that says this aligns with a value that we have in supporting this audience, and it might be a great collaboration. So
Yeah.
we'll just not subtly put that out there if anybody wants to pick it up. And, I love just talking with you about this. And again, I have such gratitude of your heart and passion for this.
Thank you.
Do you bring this on every documentary you've ever done, or is this kind of a special one for you?
We did. Go ahead. You want to take this on? Now you see how this works.
This was a special one.
It was.
But we like to bring a little bit of something of it. It's certainly the longest, as far as production times, the longest documentary by far. We did a documentary in Scotland. I think we shot in 2 days.
Yeah, we used to do stuff on food and travel. We also have a little not well known at all podcast, barely known, that just talking about travel. We love travel. We love food.
Yeah.
It's all the stuff, like everybody else, the stuff that when you're not doing your day job, the things you want to do. And so we used to just focus on that. We did a short documentary about a guy on the Aran Islands who makes goat cheese.
Yeah.
It's like, we were like, how did you get the goats on the island? And like, how do you make the cheese? And like, it's a whole cheese making factory on one of the less populated places on the planet. I mean, it's like, that was fun.
It was cool. It was neat, but it didn't have the same gravitas.
Yeah, exactly.
As this does.
This really is, for me, the first project that, and people say to this day, they're like, I can't believe, some people are like, in our profession, I can't believe you pulled this off for the amount of money that you did. And it's because I was willing to take chances, and we found people, to their credit. Like, we found, when we were shooting in some parts of this, we had to get some other videographers. And one of our videographers, Josh, shout out to Josh.
Mm-hmm.
I called him because I found him in some other way, like it was another film in the pet industry. And I didn't even think he'd answer. I called him up. I said, I have this project. We're broke. It's a shoestring budget. I could only offer this much. He literally said to me, my mom and my mom's partner are vet techs. I will do it. It was like stuff like that I'm like, thank God we had the people.
Yeah, all the cosmic things.
It was kismet. It was like, and so people are like, we don't even know how you did this. And I'm like, this is the first one that I feel like I would die on the hill to complete. Like, I was like, this is it. Like, I have to do this.
Sure.
So I don't know, put that passion into the 5-part series and it'll be magic.